Far away out past the moon came a little pink friend all alone. There's a house with a girl inside, such a nice end to his bride. Katie sees a friend in need, Orbie. It's Katie and Orbie, and here's a bunch of stories about Katie and Orbie and all the things they do. Katie's friend Orbie now has a brand new family who teach him that people all have some good inside. Fly a kite, find a snake, camp outside or learn to skate. Build a snowman with your friend Orbie. Fly a kite, find a snake, camp outside or learn to skate. Build a snowman with your friend Orbie. Adventure and playtime should always last a lifetime. And with friends like Orbie, the fun is guaranteed. So Katie and Orbie are ready with their story, playing and learning from all the things they do. As the sun begins each day, our new friend is here to stay.
It had been a top secret day. Katie discovered that if you have an exciting secret, it bubbles up inside of you. Orbie learned that sneaking wrapping paper out of the hall closet is a noisy task. And they both found out that making funny faces on cupcakes is a messy but delicious job. All day, Dad had been hinting about his birthday. All day, Mom kept telling Dad that this week was too busy. They would have to celebrate it next week. Katie and Orbie had to run out of the room and giggle because the secret that they were keeping was that they were planning a big surprise party for Dad. Katie almost gave it away when Dad was planning to have pizza for supper. But she didn't. Orbie almost gave it away when Dad decided that they should have a game of charades before bed. But he didn't. Shh! Keeping a secret was hard work and a lot of fun. It was Katie and Orbie's job to get Dad to go out of the house so that Mom could make his favorite cake and wrap the presents. They tried. First, Orbie asked Dad if he would take them to the library. Dad told Orbie that he just felt like staying home. Then Katie asked Dad if he would go for a nice long walk with her. Dad apologized to Katie and said he didn't feel like doing anything. Mom snuck Orbie and Katie into the kitchen and told them that she had a wonderful way of getting Dad out of the house. She would ask Mrs. Perrette, who knew about the surprise, to call Dad down to repair something. Katie and Orbie giggled. It was fun keeping a secret. Mom asked them to keep Dad in the living room while she phoned so that he wouldn't hear. When the two friends got to the living room, they realized that Mom didn't have to worry about Dad hearing much of anything. He was sound asleep on the couch. Mrs. Perrette loved the idea and agreed to call back in 20 minutes. Mom signaled to Katie and Orbie, and they all tiptoed upstairs. In the bedroom, Mom and Orbie blew up balloons, and Katie stuffed them in a garbage bag to hide them from Dad. Orbie blew one as big as he could. It got bigger and bigger, and suddenly, with a loud crack, it popped. Everybody jumped. Orbie shot straight up to the ceiling and stuck there. And Mom put her hand on her chest and gasped. Katie shrieked and hid behind the bag. When she looked out, everybody was quiet for a moment, and then they all laughed. Mom raised her hand to signal that everybody should be quiet. They stopped. Mom opened the door and listened. There was no sound coming from the living room. All three of them tiptoed down the stairs and checked on Dad. He was still sound asleep. Mom signaled to them that that was good, and they hurried up the stairs again. Soon the phone rang. Mom and Katie and Orbie looked at it, but nobody answered because they wanted Dad to get it. Mrs. Perrette was right on time. Well, the phone rang, and Dad slept and slept. Finally, Mom answered it. Mrs. Perrette asked for Dad, as she was supposed to. Mom explained that Dad hadn't even budged from his snooze. Mrs. Perrette had a terrific idea. Orbie could bring the cake batter down to her house, and she could bake it. They could get all the decorations ready, and then, if he woke up, Mom could send him down. He would never know the cake was for him if it was at her house. Everybody agreed that this was a good idea. Orbie put the batter in his wagon and pulled it down the street. Mom blew up the last few balloons. Katie drew a big happy face picture of Dad, and when they were finished, they tiptoed downstairs. Orbie raced in and almost slammed the door, but Mom caught it in time. When they peeked into the living room, Dad was still asleep on the couch. Now it was getting tricky, as Mom pointed out, because she had to cook the supper and set the table and decorate the room. Dad sleeping in the living room was very inconvenient. Katie and Orbie agreed. Then Mom whispered that they would get ready for the party all around Dad. No one would make a sound if they could help it. Mom put the supper on, while Katie put the placemats on the table. Orbie followed her with napkins. Next came the knives and the forks and the spoons. Katie dropped a spoon and it clinked against another. Everybody froze and looked over at Dad. Dad slept on. A few minutes later, Mom snuck in with the stepladder to put up the streamers. Orbie handed her the tape and Katie handed her the balloons. One piece of streamer fell right on Dad's nose. Everybody froze again. Dad didn't wake up, though. He just rubbed his nose and rolled over. Mom mouthed to Katie and Orbie that she couldn't believe he could sleep through all of this. But sleep he did. Soon all the decorations were up. Mrs. Perrette had baked and iced the cake and brought it back, and it was time for the party. The guests were walking up to the door. Shh! It was Katie and Orbie's job to tell them to be quiet because Dad was sleeping. Everybody crept in and stood around Dad. It was hard not to giggle. Then Mom tiptoed over and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Dad smiled and rolled over. He was very, very surprised to see all his friends standing there. And at that very same moment, everybody shouted, "Surprise!" Dad sat straight up. He looked around and saw the decorations and the beautiful table and all the presents in a pretty pile. He just couldn't believe it. Mostly he couldn't believe that his whole family had kept a secret so well. The party was great fun. Dad was at his silliest and all the guests laughed. When everybody left, Dad turned to his family and he told them that it had been the best birthday party he had ever had. They were very, very good at keeping a secret. And maybe one day you'll have to keep a secret about a surprise party. And I'm sure that you'll be very good at it too.
Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? Corn plants grow cobs of corn with seeds called kernels. When the kernels get dry and brown, you can heat them up on the stove. And pop, pop, pop! You get popcorn. Salt, anyone?
It had been a happy day. Katie discovered that when it's 3 days before your birthday, interesting packages come in the mail. Orbie found that even though it's only tape, sometimes it's hard to rip off. And they both discovered that no matter who the present is for, it's fun to guess what it is. Katie was very excited. Granny and Granddad had sent her a beautiful music box. It had a ballet dancer inside a glass bubble. When you wound it up and played the music, the ballet dancer turned in circles. It was a great present. Katie loved ballet, and the music was pretty to listen to, but mostly it was great because if you squinted and looked really carefully, the ballet dancer sort of looked like Katie. Mom explained that it was a precious toy and that if she took good care of it, she might have this very music box until she was all grown up. Mom pointed out that her dresser was a good place for it. The music box wasn't like an ordinary toy. You had to be gentle with it because it was breakable. Upstairs, Mom showed Katie a music box that her dad had given her when she was a little girl. When Mom lifted the lid, a little ballet dancer twirled in a mirror. Katie told Mom it was nice, but she liked her own more. Mom said that was as it should be. Now I have to tell you that Katie sat in her bed and watched the dancer go around and around for a long time. Orbie wanted to try it, and Katie did give him a turn, but it was short. Katie felt it would be better if not too many people handled it. It might get broken. Orbie smiled. He could tell that his best friend loved her new toy. He tried to stay and watch it, but after a while, he decided that he needed to take his toy truck outside for a drive. Chance tried to stay too, but after a while, Chance thought if she heard the music one more time, her ears would start tickling. So she went outside with Orbie. Katie noticed that no one was inside with her, and she really wanted to share her new precious music box with someone, so she went outside. She worked hard at being careful when she was carrying the music box. When she got to the front step, no one was in sight. Then she noticed Yi Ping. Yi Ping was drawing with chalk on her driveway. Katie walked over to show her the music box. Yi Ping thought it was the most beautiful thing. Katie was very happy. Katie asked Yi Ping if she thought the ballerina looked a lot like her. Yi Ping took the music box in her hand and looked closely. Katie was nervous because it looked like she wasn't really holding it tightly, but she was. Yi Ping looked at the dancer and then at Katie and gave it back, saying, "Nope." Katie was a little disappointed. Then Yi Ping added, as she drew the ballerina in chalk, that maybe she did a little bit. Katie was so excited that she just had to show somebody else. Arthur was rolling up the street on his bicycle. Katie waved at him and asked him to slow down. She showed him the music box. Arthur looked at the dancer, and Katie told him to hold it tightly because it was very precious. Arthur wasn't too sure what precious was, but he held it tight anyway. He looked at the dancer as it turned, then he handed it back to Katie. "I don't like ballet much," he said, and he rode off on his bike. At home, Dad picked up the music box, and Katie told him to make sure he was holding it properly. Dad chuckled. He told Katie he would. Orbie asked if he could wind it up. Before Katie answered, Orbie wound the key of the music box. Katie thought he was winding it too much. Orbie didn't know that you could wind it too much, so he stopped. The ballet dancer turned around and he trumpeted his success. In his excitement, he jumped up. Katie shrieked because she thought he would drop it. She grabbed it from Orbie and told him that he had to be more careful with such a special thing. Orbie was very surprised. He looked at Katie and didn't know what to say. Katie headed up the stairs with it. She was the only person who really knew how to handle it. When Katie was at the top of the stairs, Orbie burbled to her that he was sorry. Katie turned and smiled at him. She would show him how to use it properly. Orbie felt better and started up the stairs. As Katie turned to the last step, she bumped the music box into the banister and knocked it right out of her own hand. She tried to grab it, but it kept tumbling. Orbie jumped out for it, but it hit the stair and bumped out over his head and fell with a horrible smashing sound on the floor. Nobody moved for a moment. Then Katie cried, "My music box." It was broken. The dancer was snapped in two, the glass was all over the floor, and the music box was in pieces. Dad asked Katie not to go near it because the glass might cut her. Katie looked at her precious thing. It was the nicest, most beautiful thing she had ever been given, and in one day it was all broken. That night Katie cried in bed. Mom comforted her. She told Katie that she could use her old music box until another time when Katie could have one of her own again. Katie thanked Mom, but in truth, it wasn't the same. The next morning, Katie told Mom that maybe she was the one that wasn't careful with her music box. She told everybody else to be, but she took it all over the place when she could have left it in her room. Mom said that's the only problem with precious things. They aren't made to be taken everywhere. And Mom was right. Do you know that at Christmas, Granny and Granddad gave Katie the very same music box, except that the dancer looked a whole lot more like Katie, and Katie took very good care of it, as she still does to this very day. And if you have a precious toy, then you know about being careful, just like Katie.
Did you know? No. Did you know? Did you know? Did you know? Crayons are made out of wax, just like candles. Of course, you can't light a crayon or color with a candle. But if you leave your crayons out in the hot sun, they'll melt.
It had been a crazy morning. Katie discovered that even dads don't always know where they've left their shoes. Orbie found out that you absolutely have to have a ticket to get on the plane. And they both learned that dads can spill their juice too when they're in a hurry. It had been so hectic getting Dad to the airport that when Mom said they had to go shopping, both Katie and Orbie felt a little let down. They felt like it should be a day full of adventure. Shopping really didn't sound like that. Mom told them that she could arrange a small adventure if she really thought about it. Katie and Orbie sat quietly so that she could. Finally, Mom raised a finger and told them she had a brilliant idea. They would play a game of shop and seek. Now, neither Katie nor Orbie knew what shop and seek was, but they were sure it would be fun. When they pulled into the shopping center, Mom parked the car and wrote 2 shopping lists. She gave a list to Katie and one to Orbie. Mom explained that she had listed 2 things for each person to find. Katie was to find hers and Orbie was to find his, and nobody was to give hints unless they were asked. Inside the shopping center, Orbie wanted to go first. Katie and Mom agreed. Mom told him that number 1 on his list was envelopes. He thought for a moment and then smiled. He knew exactly where to get envelopes. Envelopes were at the post office. With a toot and a spin, they were off. Mom hurried behind him. When he got there, Orbie discovered that at the post office, you could mail envelopes and you could receive them, and you could buy very special ones. But you sure couldn't buy ordinary, everyday ones. Orbie scratched his head. He walked right by the shoe store. He knew for sure there wouldn't be envelopes there. Then he came to a store that had pens, pads, ink, stamp kits, and all kinds of office things. Orbie told Mom that this was the store. If there were pens and pads to write notes with, there had to be something to mail these notes in. Envelopes. Mom chuckled. Orbie was a very good guesser. As Mom paid for the envelopes, Katie started to think about where to go to get shampoo. That was first on her list. Katie told Orbie she knew the perfect place. She headed straight for the hairdressers. Mom told Katie that this was the perfect place to buy special shampoo, but she wanted regular shampoo. Katie thought again and started to walk along the mall. She passed the baker's shop and she passed the furniture store. Then she stopped right in her tracks. She was standing beside a store that had bottles of bath oil and soaps, magazines, diapers, and lots of medicine. She stood at the drugstore with her hands extended toward it. "Here it is," she said. "You can buy shampoo in this store." Mom congratulated her and went in to find it. Mom told Orbie that the next thing on his list was a cat collar. Orbie thought about it, and as soon as Mom was finished paying for the shampoo, he was off. He took them to the accessories store. There were belts and bags and stockings, and Orbie was sure that there would be a belt big enough to fit around Chance's neck. Mom pulled some out. They went all the way to the floor. Mom did a belt up and put it over her head. It was way too big to be a collar for Mom and way too big for Chance. Katie and Orbie laughed. Chance could walk right through it. Orbie walked out of the accessories store and looked around. When he looked down the hall, he saw a big bird cage. It was standing near a window with puppies in it. Orbie told Mom that now he had an even better idea. When he got to the pet store, he knew he was right. There was a whole rack of animal collars. There was one that was just the right size for Chance. As Mom was paying for the collar, she told Katie that the next item on her list was to pick up Great Uncle David's reading glasses. Katie told Orbie that this one was easy. She walked them right back to the drugstore. She pointed to the rows and rows of glasses, and Mom shook her head. She told Katie that this was a good guess, but these glasses were sunglasses. The ones they were looking for were made especially for Great Uncle David. Katie thought for a moment. She walked down the hallway and looked in the different stores. It wasn't the drugstore. It wasn't the office supplies store. It wasn't the pet store, and it sure wasn't the dry cleaners. Mom told her that she was getting warm, which meant that she was getting closer to the right store. As she walked past the hairdressers, she noticed a small store next to it that had a big picture of someone with glasses on. She peeked in the store, and she knew she found the right place. The walls were full of glasses. Katie jumped up and clapped her hands. She had found the perfect place. Mom agreed. This was called the optician, she told them, and went in to get Great Uncle David's glasses. The friends were enjoying the game of shop and seek so much they were disappointed when Mom told them that all their shopping was done. Great Uncle David needed his glasses, so they would take them to him right away. Great Uncle David was very glad to get his glasses. To say thank you, he had one last game of shop and seek for Katie and Orbie. As they stood in the street near his home, Great Uncle David said he had a treat in mind. If they could look at the stores and figure out what the treat was, he would buy it for them. Katie and Orbie hurried down the sidewalk looking at all the stores. There was a shoe repair store. They both knew that wasn't it. There was a bicycle shop, and they knew that a bicycle wasn't a treat either. Next, they came to a shop called the Tailor's. Orbie wondered if they would put tails on you, but Mom told them that they made and repaired clothes. Katie stood looking at a store window. "It's an ice cream cone," she said as she ran back to Great Uncle David. He chuckled and told her she was right. They all agreed that shop and seek was the best way to go shopping, and to this very day they still play it. I have to tell you that they are getting very good at knowing where to buy things. And if you go shopping, you could play shop and seek. And you get very good at knowing where to buy things, too.